This is the lecture on feminist perspectives. It's coming from Selnow's readings that's in the readings folder. So if you read the readings, this lecture is basically mimicking what you read. If you read them thoroughly, and you can even look at some of the slides here, it should help you with the next quiz that we will have. So let's just jump right into it. An overview is feminist perspectives examine the assumed roles and rules that govern society. They work to challenge ideologies that are generally accepted to be standard or normal. Gender as a social construction. So what do we mean? It was made up by people. So some things I want to talk about right away. Feminist perspectives, as Sel now says, she says in the text, do not claim that men oppress women. It deals with hegemony like we deal with in the popular culture text, right? It deals with the dominant ideologies. So the focus is on oppression based on sex, gender, and sexual orientation. The dominant ideology privileges men and masculinity perspectives over women and feminine perspectives. Also, the dominant ideology privileges heterosexuality over other sexual orientations. So, here it is in the second part of the slide. They suggest, and talking about feminist perspectives, that the norms of a given society are produced and reinforced by a dominant culture ideology. Excuse me. Feminists would argue, for example, that American hegemony, the valuing and privileging of the dominant forms of masculinity, results in the marginalization and oppression of women and other non dominant groups. So here are three terms that we should be familiar with: patriarchy, the structuring of society around family units where the male is the authority figure and is responsible for the welfare of his family members and the community. So, patriarchy in the media, look at all the television shows that we have. Usually, it was the man was in charge of the household, the man made the decisions, so on and so forth. Men rule. That's what patriarchy is, and women just follow. Second, we get into there's all different types of masculinity, but the highest form because it's subordinate masculinity. So, so this is hegemonic masculinity. They're defining that masculine hegemony. So it's a term that is more specific in its meaning than hegemony. It accounts for the existence of multiple masculinities and suggests that dominant social structures privilege heterosexual masculinity above other forms, as was just stated. And heteronormativity refers to the privileging of heterosexuality and an alignment among biological sex, sexuality, gender identity, and gender role. It promotes a sex hierarchy. So it's basically saying that there are good sexes and bad sexes. And we're not talking about sexual intercourse or sexual performance with one another. We're talking about sex as male, female, transgender. So it stigmatizes gay people as morally deviant and bad. So feminist perspectives engage with popular culture text, television programs, advertisement, music videos, etc. They're sites of struggle. So in other words, there's preferred readings, right? And then there's oppositional readings. So with the preferred readings, it's the way things are supposed to be. It's the way things are normalized. It, preferred readings reinforce patriarchal beliefs and behaviors through normalization. So it's blatant and obvious what's going on. Whereas oppositional readings challenge the status quo, right? They challenge the dominant ideologies. So it says that boys, when they're young, don't have to wear blue, and girls don't have to wear pink. Boys don't have to play with trucks, uh, and girls don't have to play with dolls. This is how things start. Men don't have to ask women to the prom. Women can ask men to the prom. Men can ask men to the prom. Women can ask women to the prom. So we're dealing with challenging the norms when we get into the oppositional reading. So let's move on. So there's waves of feminism. Right? First wave feminism began in the 19th century, and it focused on inequality. So this was the suffrage movement with Elizabeth Cate uh, Stanton and Susan B. Anthony. This was the first wave feminism. The second wave feminism focuses on goals of opportunity, equal opportunity. So in the second wave feminism in 1950, in the 1960s, unlike first wave feminism, second wave feminism preoccupied itself with a wider range of issues such as family life, the workplace, sexuality, reproductive rights, rape, and other unofficial inequalities. So, second wave feminism dealt with that glass ceiling and trying to break it. It also Title IX. It promoted equal opportunities in high school and college sports. Third wave feminism dealt with the standpoints. Like standpoint theory is basically is used by feminists, but it's also your standpoint theory says your frame of reference, your background, your upbringing, your career, your sexuality all makes up who you are. So if you're a gay black woman that's an attorney that paints art and plays the trumpet, this all makes up who you are. And this is a part of third wave feminism. Third wave feminism has stated that the perspectives of the dominant groups are limited. Furthermore, because people in positions of power often fail to recognize inequality and so it continues to perpetuate. So today, third wave feminism, they say a fourth wave is in effect, but still men are in power. Let's look at academics. The majority of presidents at colleges and universities across the country are still white males. They dominate this. And this is not a punch to white males that's taking this course. In the Fortune 500 companies, too, the majority of CEOs are white males. So you don't get people of color and women receiving these positions at the same rate as white males. So third wave feminism deals with equality in the workplace, equal pay, so on and so forth. The liberal feminist perspective. It says clearly a liberal feminist perspective focuses on achieving opportunities for the inclusion of women in traditionally male dominant institutions. The goals: equal access to education, equal pay, ending job segregation, which to me still isn't happening. It has a long way to go. Just like I mentioned, you can just do a study of uh, universities and see that not just the presidents, provosts, vice presidents, athletic directors, commissioners, folks who make the big bucks, majority of these positions, and there's empirical data out on this, go to white men. So white men are still in charge. So applying this to Murphy Brown, I know this show outdates most of you. You can probably, I don't know if it's on Netflix or Hulu, but it was pretty big. I know your parents know about it. This was, it was saying this powerful professional woman who made it to the top did so without a family, so she had to sacrifice what a woman really wants, which is, love and a family and a child. So if you make it to the top as a woman, you're going to be lonely, you're going to be unhappy, and you're not going to be satisfied because the dominant ideology or the normal way a woman should act is she should want to have kids, um, and want to raise a family. So it just, even though the show put Murphy Brown at the top of her profession, it still reinforced patriarchal ways. Like, men should still rule. Men should be in these positions because they're comfortable doing so. Women are not. So on to the radical feminist perspective. The radical feminist perspective is grounded on the idea that inequality originates from the way that the patriarchal system constructs men and women differently. That's gender identity. So men are supposed to clean outside the house. Women take care inside the house. Women do laundry. Men mow the lawn. Men fix the trucks. Men wash the cars. You know, women cook the food, so forth. So it's like, this is the radical feminist perspective. It challenges these notions. Men can be feminist, women can be masculine. We can have these different traits that they say naturally goes to a man and or naturally goes to the woman. This isn't true. So gender socialization and policing, girls learn and internalize to varying degrees the notion that they are objects, while boys learn and internalize the idea that they are subjects and afforded agency. This doesn't always go along cultural lines, but we're not going to get into that in this lecture. We'll wait until next week when we talk about the black female body and the black male bodies. So rhetoricians who use a radical feminist perspective often examine popular culture texts and identify the ways in which they reinforce patriarchal beliefs. Are male and female figures portrayed as objects or subjects? So on and so forth. So a Marxist feminist perspective seeks to ensure economic equality, again, for women by revealing how texts perpetuate myths about the gender wage gap, like men should make more money. The highest or the closest or the highest paid women are uh, women that makes the most amount of money as white male is the Asian female, and then the list goes down. Latina woman was last. It was Asian, white, African American, and then Latino woman in the workplace. Still, for every dollar, Asian women were making like 91 cents. That was the closest to two males or two white males. The cultural feminist perspective seeks to realign traditionally feminine traits, perspectives, and behaviors, which are devalued and trivialized in patriarchal systems. So, cultural feminists argue that stereotypically feminine skills and characteristics, such as cooperation and caretaking, should be embraced by all. That means that men can take care of kids in the house. If men are taking care of kids in the house and the women are going out to work, you shouldn't define the man as a wimp or a sissy, and you shouldn't define the woman as bitchy or aggressive. So the intersectional feminist perspective, we won't touch on this a great deal, but it assumes that various biological, social, and cultural categories, including gender, race, class, and ethnicity, interact and result in systematic social inequality. So when the feminist movement first started, it didn't bring women of color in. So that it was a big issue. So when we look at intersectionality, try to envision a street, right, where you come to this intersection. So some people deal with race, some people deal with race and gender, some deal with race, gender, and sexuality. Sometimes scholars are starting to call it the oppression Olympics. Well, I'm oppressed more than you are. But intersectionality is when you're dealing with one or more perspective or one or more situation.